Mr. Hearing Officer, I'd call John Mahan to the witness stand, please.
I didn't hear the name.
John Mahan, and I'll have him spell it for you. John, would you state your name and spell it for the court reporter, please?
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is John Mahan, and it's spelled M-A-H-A-N.
John, where do you reside?
Redding, California.
How long have you lived here?
All my life. I moved away for a year and a half, and other than that, I've been here almost 60 years.
And how old are you?
I'll be 60 in February. February 7th.
37. I'm 38. I'm ahead of you a little bit. What is your business? What business do you operate, John?
My wife and I operate Eagle Bus Ministries.
And that's a corporation?
It's an LLC.
And what does Eagle Bus Ministries do? What kind of bus service do you provide?
We operate under a Class A charter permit, so we can transport schools, anybody wants to go to an A's game, or we've done a few Reno trips. Wherever you want to charter a bus to, we can take you to it. And we also take teams to Mexico on mission trips. We did 6 trips into Mexico last year with our older buses, which I don't want to send the new ones down there because something happens, I'm still holding the purse. So.
And you can, if something, if they break down in Mexico, you leave them there?
Yeah. They're paid for.
Do you take people to the Raiders games by any chance?
Occasionally, yeah.
You don't have special guards or something? I'm kidding. When I found out that was the only stadium in the NFL that had its own police cell or jail cell and judges' chambers, I decided I better not go to any more games there. When did you go into the business?
Well, personally, I started Eagle Bus Ministries LLC in 2010, but before that, we'd been operating as a nonprofit for the last 25 years, taking teams south of the border. I might add, every kid I've taken down there has changed their life. They come back with a different perspective and appreciate what we have.
And in 2010, you changed to a profit business?
Correct.
Now, why did you change from nonprofit to profit?
My partner died in Santa Rosa in 2005, so we had attempted to start a nonprofit in 2007, and the state told us that we were too much like a business. And I said, well, you guys kind of forced us to do that. And they said, well, yeah, you're just too much like a business. You can't be a nonprofit. So we had operated for almost 4 years and ended up having to pay about $15,000 in back taxes because we've been offering, different groups a discount.
And as you said to me when we talked much earlier, you were too much like a business in the eyes of the state because of the state regulations that you had to follow?
Correct. They said we didn't do enough fundraising. I said, well, our fundraising is through the trips that we do. And they said, oh, well, you can't do it that way. So.
Okay. I understand from you, from what you told me, that people in your life urged you to fight that. And why didn't you?
Well, I operate I was operating about 4 of older buses at that time, a couple of 1963 Eagles that are bunk coaches. They seat 40 or sleep 40, so they were ideal for going to Mexico, taking teams down there. Then I had a 1976 MCI and a 1982 MCI. And I could depend on them. If I had to fix them, I could fix them. I didn't have to worry about electronics, breaking down. They were dependable. I've always been able to drive them down there. If I did have a problem, I could fix it easily and get them home. We've never been stranded. These new ones, you got to you have to get it to a shop and put it on a computer to fix it. So
was it because of that, and that was a requirement? In other words, you were responding to CARBs.
Right, CARB was coming down, so I thought, well, what's the use of fighting? I'm going to have to shut them down anyway. So at that point, I discontinued the nonprofit and had already started the LLC.
How many buses, how many vehicles do you have operating now?
Last summer I was operating 8. I'm down to 5 right now, and I'll probably have to shuttle a couple more down, but
Because they wouldn't comply?
because they wouldn't comply, correct.
And so if that's the case, you've got 8 total, is that right? 8 total diesel?
Well, I had, one was a van, so I had 7 diesels operating last summer in a 15-passenger van.
And so if you have to cut down again, how much is your business going to be cut?
Oh, over half.
And what season, basically, do you do your business in?
Pretty much start a little bit in February, March through September is my season. And sometimes I'll employ up to 12 drivers during that season. And, then of course things fall off, so I just then I'm back doing other jobs and odd jobs and whatever it takes to keep the bills going.
Those vehicles that you have shut down are going to have to shut down. How long and you've been around the bus business a long time, how long do you think, what kind of life did they still have?
Well, most of them have fairly recent engines in them. I do a lot of the work on them myself, as far as engine changes, transmission changes. I could get easily another 500,000 to 700,000 out of them, before I'd have to do an engine change.
And about how many years would that be?
Oh, gee, I think the whole fleet, I put 60,000 miles on it last year, so.
So you could have run them out through your retirement or through.
Oh, easily,
when you wanted to
yeah.
retire.
Yeah.
What are you planning to do now that your business has been cut in, or more than half, you say? What do you?
Well, depending on the outcome of these hearings, I'm contemplating shutting down and, do something else.
And when you do that, what will you do with your vehicles?
Well, several of them I probably just have to scrap them. They're not worth anything on the market with the devaluation of the equipment. And the 2 newer buses I have, I can, try to get my money out of them, pay my bills off, and and when I'm making payments on yet, so I'd have to sell it and satisfy the bank.
When we talked before, you told me you expected that you might take a 2/3 loss on the value of those vehicles.
Oh, at least, yeah. Yeah.
And is that not because of their condition, but because of the fact that of the CARB compliance?
Yeah, one is a 95, like RJ was talking about his truck, and one is a 2000 MCI. So, you put the filters on them, and you can go till 2020. I just talked to a friend of mine yesterday, and she put the filters on her bus and burnt the engine up twice. Burnt the valves up, burnt the head up. She probably had about $50,000 lost in revenue and unsatisfied customers, breakdown. And she's currently has taken the filter off her bus because it kept destroying the engine. It was running 15 degrees hotter than it would normally without the filter.
You've had experience driving trucks other than in your business. You've had experience driving big trucks.
Correct.
Tell me about the Kenworth, the 2011 Kenworth that you drove, and the problems that you went through with regeneration on that truck. And don't mention the company that you were working for
this particular,
at his request, members of the board, because of the obvious type of retaliation that has been shown many times from Sacramento.
This particular truck is a 2011 Kenworth. It has a DEF system on it, and nice truck. I mean, it's got great bells and whistles on it, all the latest stuff. Very comfortable to drive, very easy to drive. But I experienced when it would go into when they call it a regeneration, that's when they inject fuel into the filter, it would start smoking and fill the cab full of smoke. And of course, everybody around you is wondering if you're on fire, and including myself. You know, you don't know whether to bail out of the truck or keep driving, or very, very disconcerting. And turned out it was a cracked fitting. But my fear, like, you know, you can have everything in perfect working condition, but then you get one little cracked fitting like that, and then you got a fire potential. And that's happened in some cases, and that's my fear in a bus. You know, if you have that DEF system in it, you have the potential for a fire, and you got 58 people on that bus. You know, you're stuck with a fire in the engine compartment. And I'm always concerned about fires anyway under normal circumstances, without adding to it and having this filter system in there. I just talked to a driver last weekend in Hume Lake. We took 2 bus loads up there. And he said that they have a DEF system on one of their buses, and it melts the pavement under the bus when it goes into a regen. So I'm really concerned about safety, and thank God in my 30 years that I've been driving buses, you know, I've never been in an accident. I thank God for that. But you don't need to add to the mix when you have the potential for a fire back there. And that's always on your mind, you know. But driving that truck was very disconcerting to me, because there was a potential fire, and then filling the cab full of smoke, and the potential to even pass out from that smoke. You know, I don't know what's coming in there.
The DEF that you mentioned, what does that stand for?
It's a mixture of urea, which is ammonia, and distilled water, which is very toxic and corrosive, which they add to the system to knock down the NOx, to knock down the particulates before it goes through the filter.
And I believe, and maybe I missed it today, but when you told me that the smoke started developing inside the cabin, you distinctly smelled the diesel smell.
Yeah, it's a light smell, but I would say it was probably the ammonia and the distilled water that was coming through that cracked fitting, okay, you know, vaporizing.
Now, did you ever have that same experience?
And I did smell diesel too, yes.
Did you ever have a like experience in that truck again?
I had 2 experiences like that. One was in the Bay Area, and one was when I pulled into town here in Redding, met my wife for lunch, and it started smoking it right before I parked. And I was getting a lot of weird looks from people around me.
And that time you just left it and let it smoke, right?
Yep. I was glad to get out of it.
You also told me that you know of your own knowledge that truck had broken down a number of times. The company had went back east and picked this truck up, and shortly after they bought it, it broke down on the way out here. They had to take it back to the shop. I think it's broke down on them 3 or 4 times since they bought it, and due to sensors messing up, and you know, the filter plugging up, and just a number of different problems they've had. It's cost them a lot of money. John, how many people you and your wife obviously run the company? How many people do you employ to drive the buses?
Typically I have about 5 or 6 during the year, but you know, I can go up as high as 12 when we get into our season.
And are they usually people with families?
Families, and most of them have their own work, and they help me part-time as needed.
So if you go out of business, part of their income will end too?
Correct, yeah.
What do you pay probably a pretty good sized tax too as a corporation. You pay to the county and the city, or do you pay all just to the county here in California?
No, we pay state and federal taxes as well.
And those taxes will be gone if you go out of business?
Correct, yeah.
And you plan to, if you go out of business and you sell those buses, do you expect that anyone will pick up the ministry's business?
No.
that you've had good luck with?
No, it's kind of a specialized area, and we have quite a number of schools and churches that depend on us to get them to their destinations, especially in March. So we wouldn't be able to service them any longer.
Tell me about
They would have to hire buses out of the Bay Area to come up here and service them.
And what would that cost be? A lot more than that?
Probably double the cost, because they have a lot of deadhead miles to get up here and back.
You mentioned that you had seen the kids that you take, you had seen a definite change in them. Would you tell the board about that?
Yeah, it's kind of neat. I've had a lot of kids, you take them down there and they really have an attitude, and you get them across the border, they see the lifestyles of people in a third world country, say as Mexico, and it's kind of subtle at first. They don't really get it, but by the time you get them back across the border after a week and they come home, they're ready to kiss the ground, for one, because of the lifestyle we have and the ease of lifestyle that we have. And oftentimes those people down there offer you more than you bring to them, and they're so willing to give up themselves and bless your life. And I don't know of one kid that I brought back that hasn't been changed.
Right off
it's amazing.
Right off the top of your head, give me a guesstimate as to how many kids you've taken down there over the years.
Oh my gosh. That's really hard to say. Like I said, we did 6 trips down there last year.
And how many per
47, 50 in some of the teams. Sometimes we've taken 3 bus loads at a time. I didn't get much rest on that trip.
50 a year?
Oh, 50 times 6 last year,
So 300 a year since 2010, just since 2010.
Correct.
1,500 kids.
Yeah.
That very likely, the chances are they won't get that opportunity.
No, well, they'd have to rent vans and cars, and then you have more drivers on the road, and a safety issue. And
what is the income level and the lifestyle of the kids that you take down there?
Oh, most of them are, well, gee, I take some out of the Bay Area, some out of Hayward, some out of Modesto, some out of Cameron Park. So most of them aren't real high-income families. They're scrimping and scraping to do the trip, and they volunteer their time to go down and build houses and work with the kids. And
well, you heard me. You've been in the room all day, haven't you? Just about. And you heard me ask the question about environmental justice, which is the law of California. Would you say that your going out of business would have more impact on low-income kids and families than it would on higher income?
Correct. Yep.
Give us an estimate, if you would, and I haven't asked you this before, so I don't expect that you've looked at your books or anything, but give us an estimate, if you would, of the amount of buying power that would be lost to Reading and the county if you go out of business.
I think we grossed $389,000 last year, and most of that went to labor and fuel and repairs. So, well, if you divide it into thirds, I mean, the shops would lose out, the fuel companies would lose out, the employees lose out. So
$250,000 basically a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Members of the board, or Mr. Hearing Officer, do any members of the board have any questions?
I do. In thinking, John, about this cracked fitting and the smoke fumes, is there always a smell that comes from those, or can they be non-odorous?
It can be. It was a real light smell. In fact, you wouldn't even notice it's there unless you saw the the smoke coming into the cab.
So if a driver is driving down the road and those fumes are slowly starting to come into the cab, they could render themselves helpless within a short length of time by being unconscious and driving down the road and hitting something. Wouldn't that be?
Possibly. I made sure I rolled the windows down to get some air circulating because I didn't want to get, I didn't know if it would asphyxiate me or not, but I just, I didn't want to go there.
Yeah, because we've had 2 wrecks recently that there was no explanation for them. They just had a wreck, and it's come up that possibly this could be linked to that.
Yeah.
Mr. Hearing Officer, if I might, excuse me. John, I want to thank you. Thank you and thank Ray and your wife. You and I know each other, and my wife and I have traveled on your buses to Sacramento to different music things down there, Bill Gaither and some of those things. And I just thank you for all that you've done and all the kids that you have taken to Mexico. And it's a shame that this state has to be in a tithy over something that they can't even bring the information out as far as the science or as far as the actual rules. Like Mary Nicholas made the statement, I've been back to D.C. and I've seen the science and the information, and we're not going to turn it loose. This is ridiculous. Yeah. But I just thank you for the things that you guys do for the community and for those communities up and down the state. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Hearing Officer, I've got a question here for John. First, a comment, John. I've gone with a group that used your bus going to Mexico, and they're very good. Actually, I've gone 20 years in a row, and I'll be going down again at Easter time, and it does change the lives of those students who will be taking down 40 high school students, about half girls, and it's incredible to see how the confidence that they can develop as they learn that they can actually build something. And it is much nicer to be able to go down on a bus than it is to take, I think we took 14 vans last year, 14 vehicles, and a bus does make it a nicer atmosphere. Yeah. But as you say, the price of the big commercial buses has priced our group out of taking buses now. And then I wanted to ask you a question, just kind of a hypothetical one. If you took one of your non-compliant buses, one of your older buses that's fairly dependable, and turned it into a motorhome for yourself, would you still be able to drive that without a particulate filter?
Yes. Yes.
Right, so it would still be on the road, but motorhomes are exempt, is that
correct?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can comment on the motorhomes, when this truck and bus rule was first proposed back in 2006, motorhomes were included. But you had the retired generation, many who vacation, the RV places, they mounted, a huge campaign and were later taken out of the rule.
I might add, John Haas, that was testifying earlier, said that he had his motorhome in Lakehead the other day, and an agent came up and was going to give him a ticket for a little puff of smoke that came out of his engine. He had a, 1960s something flexible bus, and he pretty much told him, "You need to get out of here. I'm going to pound you." But and I guess the guy called the cops on him, and the cop came out. He says, he said, "I've never heard him threaten to pound somebody. You better get out of here." So he was going beyond the reg, trying to ride him on a motorhome.
Yes, sir. Mr. Hearing Officer, thank you. I just have one question. It's something that's occurred to me, and I probably should have asked Mr. Smith, and maybe if he feels that he has something to offer on this, he could let us know. I'm curious about insurance. It appears that there's a heightened risk factor involved with these filters, and I'm wondering if by any chance the insurance companies have recognized this, and if you've experienced any increase in premiums or difficulty in procuring insurance because of that.
2 years ago, I was paying about $15,000 to $20,000 in insurance, and we have to carry $5 million per bus. So this year, I had to pay $35,000. And I said, why is it increasing so much? And he said, well, we've had a lot of accidents. We got to, just because we're increasing everybody's rates. So.
Were you able, was there any connection?
No connection. We haven't had any accidents. We have a clean record.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
I'd just like to add one thing. You asked what DEF stood for, diesel exhaust fluid.
Right. I wanted that in the record. It's diesel exhaust fumes.
Fluid.
What?
Diesel exhaust fluid.
Oh, fluid. I thought it was fumes all this time.
It produces
In some cases
fumes.
it is.
What it turns
results in
into.
them, I guess. Thank you, sir. That's what I wanted in the record.